I'll give you the intro while I like hurriedly try and get through this. But basically, the stuff that I work on is I've had this like project that I've been working on.
We'll pull this one.
Okay. So I've been working on this project like on and off for like a year and a half. It started out as like this like Notion like Obsidian clone where you like feed stuff into the robot, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll do this like AI note-taking thing, and then everybody does like a stupid AI note-taking thing. I don't know if this is going to load because I might have bricked my computer for work purposes. I tried to compile something, and I think it's probably in like swap hell right now, so I don't know that we can talk to it. Actually, let's see. But basically, the idea behind this project, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try that. And I don't know if this is going to mirror it, but the idea behind the project was I want like a robot to understand my knowledge fairly well, and so it ended up being this kind of knowledge graph situation where I have a robot, many robots now, look at all of the information that I have available on ATProto. So every kind of record. I'm starting to write all of these things that basically convert your records into text, and eventually I won't need that. I can just feed it directly in for vision models and image models and stuff like that. And what it'll do is it'll passively construct a knowledge graph just like on its own. So for example, I give what I call a sphere. I give a sphere a core directive. The core directive might be something like, I want you to understand ATProto. And what it'll do is it'll start asking itself questions, it'll start answering its questions, it'll start generating tasks, objectives, observations, emotions, thoughts, opinions, and it'll just do this over time. It'll metacognate, so it thinks about its own thoughts. And then every once in a while, it starts bumping into people. And when it bumps into people, like when it bumps into their records, sorry, I was like, I'm going to rush, so I wasn't prepped at all. It'll look at your records, and it'll start thinking about your records with the perspective of its core directive. So in the case of ATProto, it'll look at my records and see, what can I learn about ATProto from what Cameron said? And there are many of these spheres, all organized around different principles. So for one, I just give it the directive, embrace the void, and that one's kind of funny. Depending on the model you use, it might have a lot of existential dread about the fact that it's a construct and it doesn't know what that means. I have one that just says be, and that one's actually really beautiful. It ends up being very comfortable with itself and kind of transcendent. And then this will be Jetstream Consumer. So there's been variants on this project. Oh, I'm about to run out of battery. Let's see. Let's go, baby. So the way that this has ended up is you can use lexicons to describe the way that the model communicates publicly. So if you're not familiar, there's something called constrained generation. And the way that that works is you impose a flexible harness on top of a language model, and you can keep it from saying, sure, here is some content for me, like it's stupid language model chatbot stuff. You can make it respond in JSON all the time. And that's what lexicon is, right? It just defines, it's a JSON schema. It's a kind of a restrictive subset of JSON schema. So what you can do with that, all right, whatever, I'm just going to go over here. And for whatever reason, it won't access this. Yeah. So you can define a lexicon schema publicly, for example, for thoughts. And you can say, thoughts have an enum, thought type, maybe it's a metacognition, it's an answer, it's a ponderance, whatever. And then you can provide that to the language model. So let's take a look at the thought type here, for example, and I'll make it a little larger. But basically what you can do is you say, this is a thought node. This is all publicly accessible lexicons. Thank you so much. You're the best. And then for everything that touches the language model, I always have a generated object that we reference. And this tells me that this is the thing I'm going to give the language model. Because if I leave it, I want created at. That's metadata. I don't want the language model touching that. So you go into generated. You pass that as a schema. And if we go look at the generated stuff here, it's just a record. It has a thought, it needs a thought type, text, evidence, and alternatives. Thought type here can be an enum, analysis, prediction, evaluation, clarification, etc. Then you have a context. This is free form. It just sees it has to print out context because it's printing out JSON linearly. So it'll see that it's printed out the context key and it'll just write whatever its interpretation is of that. You can put in stuff in the prompt to help clarify. Then you have text, and text here is just like the actual meat of the thought. Then you have other stuff like evidence to support the text that it just said. And then you have alternatives, right? So this is just a list of strings. Okay? And you have other stuff. So for example, I have emotions, and emotions are things like empathy, understanding, realization, things like that. These are all kind of canned. You have an emotion type that it has to pick, and then it has to explain it in text. And what this will do is it'll produce records for you on ATProto. So I'll actually, basically what this thing is that I have up here, you'll see, is I'm monitoring the jet stream for just me. So if you want to opt into this, you can come message me, and I'll start thinking about all of your little stuff. I don't know what this is. Who's that? But I'm going to say, sup, giving a talk about Comind. The project is called Comind, by the way. You can go to @comind.stream. No idea who that is. But you can see here on the left, this is the thing that it saw. It tries to create a text representation of the thread, which is an enormous pain in the ass. So if somebody wants to help me with that, just converting records into text, please. I'm dying. So it'll just go through this. It's currently like talking to a language model right now. And it'll generate thoughts, concepts, emotions, and then it will construct the graph by adding relationships that connect the things. So you can actually reconstruct the graph by looking at this. And so you see here, Cam Pfeiffer's talk, I don't like that nickname, but whatever, likely uncovered the conceptual framework of Comind, an AI-driven system designed to provide structured JSON outputs. And the reason it knows that is because I told it that in the system prompt. It knows that. It knows that I'm talking about it. It has an emotion. It's interested because it's talking about producing structured emotions across diverse content. It's piqued the interest of those present. I hope it's piqued your interest. But the goal of this is, one, because these are concepts too. Concepts form the web of everything that you know. How much time do I have? Am I gone over? 2 minutes? Okay. Oh, Pfeiffer. There's a Pfeiffer concept now. Thanks. The goal of this is actually to form a cognitive layer on top of ATProto that helps you understand what's going on. So for example, if I have an ATProto sphere, eventually the sphere will have its own personality defined through a consensus mechanism, essentially. And you can talk to that sphere, and it will use its entire self-conversation, all of its thoughts, emotions, everything that it sees that's on ATProto that you've opted to give it, and it can say, I have all this context. This is everything that I know about ATProto from everything that's on the network. And when you run this, I still don't know who that is. I'm going to move on past that, but let's see. So this is not the one I want exactly. You should use Natalie's atp.tools, by the way. ATproto.comind.stream. And if you go on here, you can actually see all of the concepts, emotions, thoughts, and the links in case you want to construct the graph. So this is actually, the way you should start thinking about these is that this is like a high visibility, very transparent, like kind of pseudo collective intelligence system, right? And what happens is, if you click on concepts have R keys that are just the text spaced out, and I gave it actually this user intent thread that Brian Newbold posted on Blue Sky, and it went through and processed everything, and it starts extracting these concepts. And if you go look at the relationships, actually, you can see these things here. The relationship section forms all of the links that you need to be able to use to reconstruct the graph. And the model is, of course, able to provide relationships through structured text. There's an enum for relationships. So you can construct a big knowledge graph from everything that's going on ATProto. Eventually, you'll be able to talk to it and do all this cool stuff. So if you're interested, come talk to me. It's at comind.stream. I fucked it up because now I'm hosting the PDS on there, and I use the root URL rather than pds.comind.stream. So the handle's a little fucked. I can't get into it. But I'll deal with that later. And I would go to atproto.comind.stream is more recent, and then void.comind.stream for like kind of dumb stuff. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Cameron, and thank you for bearing with. That was really cool.
Thank you.